If you ever played Rise of Nations, you may have noticed that most players are absolute idiots. And most likely you are one of them too. But it's fine because that's why I'm here. To teach you how to play Rise of Nations, starting with combat. The first thing I'll be talking about is, as you likely guessed, doctrines. Air doctrines are split under mass production and special training, which are also known as the good air doctrine and special training. Well, that's kinda simplifying it, so let me be more clear. Special training is split into 3 paths, which are buff a specific kind of airplane, while mass production buffs all airplanes, and also lets you produce them faster. There is something to be said about aerial supremacy when it comes to special training, but mass production still outshines it. When you look at the naval doctrines tab, you might say you have 3 choices, but actually you only have 2. And that is because submarines are fucking trash. Next we have light flotilla, which is only good if you are a small country in the early game and you will have to deal with naval warfare. Otherwise go for green fleet. Also, please never go for fast attack or force projection. Ah yes, the land doctrines. The only doctrines anyone actually cares about. But which one is the best? Surprisingly, this isn't as one-sided as the air doctrines or naval doctrines, since almost all of the land doctrines are viable throughout the whole game. But that doesn't mean that all doctrines are equally good. And we will rank them from the worst to the best one. The worst doctrine in the game is static lines. Now, I actually didn't know if I should rank massed attack or static lines as worse, since neither of them are exactly good. So I hopped into a private server, got maximum technology for both of them, and put 250,000 static lines infantry against 1 million massed attack infantry, since massed attack makes infantry require 4 times less manpower. As you can see, static lines lost quite badly. Also, I don't even want to talk about what happens when static is on the offensive. Also, I know some of you people who still cling to static lines will be mad at me and say static infantry is supposed to be supported by artillery and aircraft, and you're right, but static doesn't even give the best buffs in the game for support. Manouvre Warfare does. And the defense nerf didn't help it much either. The second worst doctrine in the game is massed attack, which shouldn't shock anyone. You know, I tried making this video once more and ranked this doctrine as the best one, but I proved myself wrong and had to remake it from scratch. So you can blame this video coming out so late on massed attack. This doctrine basically focuses on giving you shitty divisions in exchange for a lot of manpower. It can be a pretty good doctrine in the early and mid game, but it's fucking trash in late game. The second best doctrine is Manouvre Warfare. I want to make it clear that I do not like this doctrine due to a simple fact: it's so fragile. You get very strong tanks that can kill pretty much any ground unit in a 1v1, but you get a lot of war exhaustion. It's also extremely expensive, so if you send like 5k tanks and they die, you are collapsing. Though it's still much better than static lines and massed attack, since it can easily defeat both of those doctrines. Finally, the best doctrine in game is, without a doubt, Specialization. This doctrine gives you very good buffs to infantry, makes you spawn troops at season level training, and makes it much easier to specialize. You will also have an easier time fighting entrenched or fortified units. The only problem with this doctrine is that you get less manpower, so it might not be too good of a choice for most countries in the early game, but you can just use tanks until you have the manpower you require. Now, I did give you these rankings, but I have yet to prove it. So in the next section, I'll be playing as Spain with each doctrine, and my goal is simply to unite Europe as fast as I can. But first, let's go over the rules. I am not allowed to change doctrines. If let's say I play mass attack, I must stick to it from the beginning to the end of the run. The only ideology I can go for is absolute monarchy and fascism, so no communism or democracy. Finally, I have to try my best for each doctrine. We start off with mass attack, and I do the usual strategy. Build 4 electronic factories, invade Andorra and Gibraltar, sell as many electronics as I can, then invade Portugal to form the Iberian Union. I then just proceeded to invade Africa so I can develop my mainland, just like the actual Europeans, but then... That's right, Germany declared war on me. You see, this Germany player was a grandmaster, and he proceeded to kill everyone in Europe. I knew he'd come after me at some point, so I did have some defenses prepared, but it wasn't enough and he managed to break through. He still lost most of his tanks, so I sent him a white piece. But for some reason, the idiot, instead of accepting, demanded the city of Tunis, then proceeded to release everything after we peaced. Thankfully he didn't delete my factories, so I managed to survive. After that, I proceeded to take France and the Benelux, but I was locked out of expanding further in Europe by Sweden, Egypt and the UK. I knew I had to go to war with one of them, and I knew I should start with the weakest one, which would have been Sweden. The problem is that he was allied to the USA, so I decided to go after the UK first. I also decided to try out my infantry, so I made a couple of divisions. After that I invaded the UK without much of a struggle, since he wasn't defending his mainland, but the war took a while since he also had lands in Africa which I had to take. I then proceeded to kill Sweden, which USA didn't mind, maybe because China just capital sniped him, but this actually worked to my advantage. You see, China only demanded Hawaii and USA wanted revenge. Since I needed lands from China to form the European Union, I allied the USA and we prepared to kill China together. But we had to wait for their truce to end, and I still needed to kill Turkey so I can have a bigger area to attack him from. The problem is that while I was in the middle of killing Turkey, this happened. That's right, I was once again attacked. And once again, my opponent was using Manouvre Warfare. And I want you to just look at the following clip. 4 of his tanks divisions just killed 29 of my infantry units. This is not fair at all, this doctrine is fucking trash, I hate it. Then me and China just went back and forth for a while, until he decided to try sniping my capital with 25,000 tanks. I would have lost here, the only reason I won was because of USA's infantry. China then tried one last attack, but he was already collapsing, so he lost in the end. After a very long war, I managed to finally force peace him and form the European Union by 2032. So, what strategies did I use for mass attack? If you bother to look at the units I deployed throughout the game, you can see that I mostly used tanks all the way until 2024. That is because mass attack infantry cannot be used effectively until you have some kind of research on it. After you have the money, manpower and technology, you are simply supposed to spam as much infantry as you can. More efficient strategies are to spam a lot of infantry with must, then switch to another doctrine, but I couldn't do that due to the rules I imposed on myself. The next game was with static lines, and my starting strategy was pretty much the same as for mass attack. Form the Iberian Union, rush North Africa and prepare to conquer Europe. Sadly the Turkey player rushed Tunisia, so I was unable to take it. My biggest problem right now was money, and Europe was kind of finding itself like usual, so I kept on expanding in Africa to get all the treasuries. After a while the UK declared war on me, and he had like 5,000 tanks with battleships and destroyers, which did kinda scare me, so I kept trying to stall his tanks. Eventually I did let him land, in the hopes he'd try to take Madrid, and that's exactly what he did. After losing all of his tanks, he simply rage quit. Right after I was done with the UK, Germany attacked me, and he was using Specialization, which is a very good counter to static lines, but he didn't max it out. We just kept following each other's divisions around with artillery, but after I took Paris I guess he just gave up or got bored, because he sent the rest of his divisions into my entrenched stack before quitting. After killing Germany I had to prepare for an actual war. You see, Italy, Russia and China were the last powerful countries which had lands in Europe, and on top of all of that, they were all allies, meaning I would have to fight 3 powerful nations on my own. What the 3 didn't know was that I was already preparing and went up to limited conscription. I also focused on my economy ever since the war with Germany. So, with the money and manpower I now had access to, I trained almost 15 million infantry. Okay, stop. Let's talk a bit about strategy. As you can see, China mobilized most of the defenses both in Ukraine and northern Italy. I had 2 main lines, the one meant to hold off Russia and China from the east, and the one meant to push into Italy. For the Italian line, I had artillery behind my infantry so I can wear their divisions down before attacking. I also had many fighters prepared in the Benelux and Rhineland because I spotted Italy's own fighters in Vienna. Once the war started, most of China's divisions were already dying and he retreated. I used this opportunity to begin my invasion of Italy. After I dealt with him, I asked Russia and China for the lands in Europe, and they both accepted, even though China wasted a bunch of my time. I finished uniting Europe slightly later than I did with mass attack, because I messed up some peace deals. I should start the following section by saying I did not expect static lines to be this strong. Other than my Romania video, this is the first time using static in a couple of months. Now, in that video I was using static pretty badly, so this is why I ranked it so low. But clearly, it performed a lot better than mass attack. So, what strategies should you use for static lines? First, you should use support. Since your attack is nerfed against entrenched divisions, your main goal should be to make your enemy move his troops. Either use attackers or artillery like I did with China. Second, make use of the manpower you gain. Static gives you enough manpower to make a lot of troops, enough to outnumber your enemy. Thirdly, don't avoid conflict. Due to the high defense of static, conflict with other divisions takes a very long time, which means a lot of training. Now, if you ever face a static user, you may know that if they have trained units, you're pretty much done. Our next game was with Specialization, and I have to admit I was pretty excited for it. After uniting Iberia, I attacked Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia, and I expected this to be kind of fun, since Algeria and Tunisia were players, but they didn't do much, so I easily defeated both of them. After I took over most of Western Africa and started researching infantry, I realized something. Pretty much all of Western Europe was allied. This did kind of slow down my plans now, since I wanted at least 2 million infantry before attacking this alliance, and at this point I barely passed a million, but someone else decided for me. You see, the USSR was not part of this alliance, and he also seemed to know how to play. So when he declared war on Germany, Europe was pretty much doomed. I also declared war shortly after, but the alliance didn't put up much of a fight. Next, there was the USSR. I planned on declaring war on him after we dealt with Switzerland, but he got too confident and decided he would declare war first. He sacrificed 3 million divisions to a respectable cause of training my infantry, then I offered him white peace out of the goodness of my heart. After a war that was longer than it should have been, and even further preparation, I declared war on the USSR. What I didn't realize was that this player was not the same as the one before. Also, he kept calling me egotistical, and I'm not sure he knows what it means. All he did was spam infantry in Germany with what I think is static lines, then use the same untrained, unspecialized infantry for an attempted counterattack. Once he lost those troops, the war was pretty much concluded and they managed to form by 2033. Sadly for both you and me, I didn't get to show much of the strategies for specialization, so we'll get into that now. As I said before, a big problem for specialization is the low manpower increase and the expensive infantry. Both of those problems are solved if you are a big country like the USA or China. But if you're not, let's go over how you can deal with those. Money is pretty simple, just invade as many countries as you can, whether it's the islands in the Caribbean, or Africa, or Oceania. You can get billions from simply invading a bunch of countries. Manpower is even easier to solve. If you wanna play fascism, you get 55% total manpower bonus if you keep generic state doctrine. You can also go for extensive conscription if you need even more manpower. If you want to play communism, well, you're playing communism, so manpower is not going to be a problem. Now, if you play democracy as a country that does not start as a democracy, then you're playing the game wrong, so I will not give you any manpower tips. Okay, I'm kidding. Democracy is the only ideology that actually lowers manpower, but the buffs it gives can easily make up for it. Getting more than double the tax income means it's much easier to develop and build recruitment centers early game, which increase manpower significantly. Again, you should go for extensive conscription if you need even more manpower. But democracy requires at least 100 million population to work well, and if you have that high population, manpower shouldn't be a problem anyways. Now let's get into actual combat. Like usual, you should use tanks early game until you have the manpower to efficiently use infantry. My second point is about the kind of specialization you get. You have to choose between arid, mountain, winter and jungle, and each one gives you ×2 attack for each terrain. For example, if you fight in regions with winter, like Europe and North America, you should get winter specialization. If you fight in Central Africa, get jungle, for the Middle East get arid, so on and so forth. Our next and last game was with Manouvre Warfare. Now, here I had a pretty decent run. I got to form Iberia like usual, but Morocco and Saudi teamed up on me, and I couldn't do much since they seized 3 of my big cities. In my second attempt, I made the mistake of starting a player war too soon. I formed Iberia, and instead of expanding in Africa for money, as you should with Manouvre Warfare, I decided to go directly into France. At first, this was a bit of a back and forth, but when I finally managed to seize and occupy Paris, I knew I won. The problem is that after the war I was losing money and my war exhaustion was really high. I could have dealt with that easily. The problem is that Cuba attacked me. And somehow, without expanding one bit, without any trades and without even any factories, he could sustain not only 1.3 million specialization infantry, but he also attacked me of all people. So it was obvious this guy was using an alt, and not only that, he also had the audacity to say, "Farewell Spain, you did well." So if you're the Cuba player and happen to see this video, fuck you, I hope your whole family died. My third attempt with Manouvre started the same as the 5 previous games. Attack Andorra and Gibraltar for money, form Iberia and expand into Africa. I plan to be a lot more patient for this game, since rushing into one war after the other with Manouvre Warfare guarantees you will die. Around late 2021, France, who was trying to form Napoleonic Empire and needed Catalonia from me, declared war. He was also using Manouvre Warfare, and our tanks were about the same strength. I had a couple of attackers prepared, which I used as soon as I saw his incoming stack of tanks. Thankfully, he didn't have neither fighters nor anti-aircraft, so he couldn't do much about my attackers, which made it easier for me to use my 2000 tanks to kill every stack one by one. But I also made the mistake of rushing his 700 entrenched stack with my own tanks, because he was about to take Barcelona, and I panicked. I don't know why I did this, I would have just recaptured it anyway since my tanks were right on the city, so that was a huge blunder on my part. He also finally made a fighter, which meant it was time for me to build my own. I proceeded to recapture my lands, and I don't know why, but he didn't delete my factories. Then France, realizing he was fighting the best player on the planet, had to call for help from the UK like a little bitch. It still wasn't enough to stop me from almost taking Paris and kill 800 British tanks at sea. Not only that, but the UK didn't learn their lesson, and I killed 2000 more tanks using the same strategy. Then we mostly had air battles, until France tried to take my capital and failed miserably. The thing is that I no longer had any planes, so instead I made anti-aircraft until I could rebuild my air force. I also kept on asking for white peace, but France either ignored me or refused, and he was smart to do so, because, just like he said, I would have gotten stronger and attacked him. In all honesty, I don't know how either of them was able to keep mobilizing tanks for so long, but France had a second attempt at taking Madrid, and this one almost succeeded. Fortunately for me, the UK had to go and he white pieced me. I used this as leverage to ask France to white piece me as well, and at first he once again ignored me, but then we agreed to a pact. He will demilitarize for 2 years and give me 25% of his income for 5 years in war reparations, in exchange for Catalonia and Andorra from me. Here I should have just camped him, since he would have been unable to do anything about it, so I don't know why I didn't. Not only that, but I also allied him for some reason. I guess I was just feeling nice. After that I went to a preparation that was a lot longer than it should have been, and realized the alliance with France wasn't really worth it. I led South Africa and broke ties with France. South Africa then proceeded to nuke France, and then I attacked him so I could finally form the EU by 2038. Finally, the last strategies section we will go into. As you know, war exhaustion and money are the biggest problem for Manouvre Warfare, so it is very important you take wars slowly. I know you might be tempted to just rush in, but that is how you collapse. In my war with France, I didn't just spam out 10k tanks and rush them, because I knew that even if I did manage to take them over, I would have also collapsed due to all the losses. This is also very important, casualties. Avoid battles you know you might lose or win with high losses. Also, go for coordinated fire support technology, since it makes it not only faster to capture cities, but also gives you less losses from it. Now, the thing about Manouvre Warfare is that specialization and static surpass it by late game, so you shouldn't even use it beyond mid game or even early game. And with that, you now know not only which doctrine is the best and which is the worst, but also how to use them. Now I should probably let all of you know the reason why I didn't post in so long.